Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another edition of Flashpoint, a program of issues and ideas. Flashpoint is brought to you by the Lawrence Debate Union, an endowed co-curricular activity at the University of Vermont, which trains UVM students in the arts and skills of debating and then has them debate against other sentient beings from around the state, around the region, around the nation, and also around the world. In fact, we're going to Europe in less than 2 weeks, and we're going to Asia in less than 2 months. But for right now, we are right here for this edition of Flashpoint. My name's Alfred C. Snider. I'm the Edwin W. Lawrence Professor of Forensics at the University of Vermont. And I want you to know that you can do more than just watch Flashpoint on Burlington's Channel 15. You can also go to our website, which is debate.uvm.edu, click on the Flashpoint icon, and there are many Flashpoint programs for on-demand viewing. I like that expression, on-demand viewing. I'm joined for this program by a panel, and you know, our panels always consist of members of the Lawrence Debate Union, past or present, and we almost never have any experts on unless we happen to be experts, because one of the purposes of this show is to indicate to people that you don't have to be an expert to do some research, to get some information, to engage in the process of critical thinking, and you can come up to some pretty astounding conclusions and find out some pretty amazing things. We do it just because we're on TV. It doesn't mean you can't do it at home anytime you want with your family or your friends. But you don't happen to be here in the studio for now, so we got this panel. On my right, I have Samuel Ricker, who's now the Dean of Flashpoint Panelists. Samuel, I want you to start thinking about themes for future Flashpoint programs.
I will. I can't believe you bestowed a title on me.
The Dean?
Yeah.
Well, that means you're the elder of the group. You've been on more shows than most people around. I think you're above 20 now. So, and we want to say hi to Charles Hogue down in North Carolina. He was the previous dean. We got a new boss in town now. On the far left, we have Nicole Colston. Nicole Colston is new to our debate program this year, and she's been such a great addition. Nicole comes to us by the way of Appalachian State University and the University of Miami. You're teaching courses at the university, as well as coaching debate. And how's the teaching going?
It's fun, you know, persuasive speeches. We're getting on it.
What are there any weaknesses that you see in UVM students as communicators, or are they all strengths?
They're great. I have to be positive. I don't know that I don't want to speak to their weaknesses on television.
Very good.
That's a relationship we discuss, you know, in private.
Very good. I couldn't lead her into that. She's tough. On my immediate left, I have Sam Natale, who's a first-year student from Florida. And biggest difference between Vermont and Florida is?
Well, I'd say the apples and oranges, but you can't really compare them.
Oh, there, boom. Okay, welcome to show number 353. Now, at the bottom of your screen, it says cyber stalking, but we thought Nat threat, and it's okay though, because we had a hard time figuring out what to call this show, so it probably needs more than one title. But we have a new information landscape that all of us are learning more about as time goes on. We have new opportunities to express ourselves. We have new opportunities to have our privacy invaded. And along with new opportunities to express, there are also new possibilities to censor us from expressing. And a lot of times it happens in ways that we may not even understand. So what we're going to do today on program 353, boy, we're really determined, aren't we? 400, here we come, is to talk about some stories that have come up recently about these ideas of information technology, censorship, expression, privacy, that we have just been pretty amazed by and fascinated by. And I sort of want to start with an overarching issue, and that's this issue of net neutrality. Now, Nicole, you were saying before the program that the internet was sold to us as this great new thing. Right?
Yeah, totally. The internet, the World Wide Web, the internet revolution, all sold to us as increasing the marketplace of ideas, creating a global world where we could communicate with people, across geographical barriers, and that would be this tool for, big claims, broadening human consciousness by being access to information. And what we find, I think, is that there's corporations who are participating in creating structures, technological structures, and standards that are limiting some of that potential.
Has opened up the marketplace of ideas, and it really has kind of broadened a lot of what we thought possible within people publishing themselves who with ideas that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get into there. And what I think the internet is these smaller groups that are able to put out their information, that we're able to access it. And what protects that is the concept of net neutrality, which is
right, and I want to get to that issue of net neutrality. And the thing is that we're all equal on the internet, right? Everybody gets their same. Well, the first thing is I think that's nonsense because people have different connection speeds, right? If you're still on 28.8 dial-up, most of the internet's not available to you. But then there's the whole issue of net neutrality.
But I mean, the question of connection speed, that's generally improving for most people, and the issue of net neutrality is basically not on the part of the clients but on the part of the providers. It basically says that any information that comes through the tubes has to be given the same preference, and that this means that Google can't necessarily pay, say, Comcast more to give you their site faster, nor can they pay to slow down anybody else. We want the internet to be just messengers, otherwise it would be cable TV, where we have to pay to see certain things, and certain things are blocked off from us. This has recently come under fire, hasn't it, from Congress?
Yeah. Well, somebody may be lobbying Congress to say, we don't want to have all messages neutral. It's like an animal farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, and all internet information is equal. But my information is more important than others, so that then rich people would get to see their HD streamed movies really fast, and then everybody else has to limp along with. So those small people that you're talking about that are getting their points out won't be able to.
Well, even something like Wikipedia, which is widely used, is mostly a non-profit venture. And if net neutrality were to go, that would go. But we also have issues such as companies who are already refusing to treat all information the same right now.
Okay, so here we go. We got a bunch of stories about weird things that have happened, and we just want to talk about them. And I'm going to start. I want to talk about the power of Google. Everybody finds things using Google. As George Bush says, I use the Google. And when you look for something, I did it this morning. I was looking for something, and I just typed it into the Google window and pressed the button, and I found it. But Google doesn't have to do that. They don't have to list your website. In fact, for some websites, they decide to delist it. And there's a good example of a website in Australia called Enjoy Perth, and Perth being the capital of Western Australia. And they had a lot of ads on there, on their website. They had other information too, but a lot of ads for local, hotels, resorts, whatever. But they didn't seem to have any Google advertisements. Now, the most popular web ads are Google AdSense, and that's the most popular. You see them over on the side, or now in the middle, or whatever. So they delisted this website. So if you typed the name of the website into the search engine, you would not find it. Why? Because they didn't like the kind of advertising that they were handling. So that seems to me to be an incredible violation of net neutrality. Oh, if I have Google AdSense, then you know, Google will lead all the customers to me, and if I use somebody else's ads, then I'm screwed. That's not net neutral.
Then again, that's not technically a violation of net neutrality, because Google is the one providing access to the information. They just make access easier. Now, if it were although, you know, it is definitely not a good thing for the internet for a company to nix access to those who don't support them.
It's legal. I don't like it.
Yeah.
There's a number of things that are legal I don't like. Okay, so I got that one off my chest. That was bothering me.
What seems like what is just right out a violation of net neutrality, and that they're coming under legal fire for it, is Comcast, a major cable internet provider, has been
my cable internet provider.
Yeah, and I believe it serves, you know, a good part of not just the north, the south. It's all over the country. And basically what it has done is it has blocked access of its users to BitTorrent, which is a tool for downloading large files, and it's incredibly effective. But the fact that people can download these large files, such as movies or games or whatever, so easily has kind of dominated the traffic, and Comcast decided to cut it out. And they've, I believe, fired people who've been within the company who've been talking about this.
Right. First, they cut down on the limits of people who are doing a lot of BitTorrenting. Then when their employees talked about it, they fired them, which is, you know, that's not too good. Their logic is, well, every neighborhood that has a cable modem gets a certain amount of connectivity, and if some people are using it all up, then other people can't get it, which I find to be nonsense. I mean, the whole network slows down.
Yeah.
I mean, on a Saturday afternoon, if there's a big a big game on or something, I try not to use the internet at my house because it all slows down. Right. So I think that's kind of a false claim. Why wouldn't the BitTorrent streams slow down as well as
And the
everybody
other thing
else?
is that if they are slowing down, first of all, as consumers, we pay, when we pay for either DSL or cable, we pay for all we can eat, so to speak.
Yeah.
We get to download as much as we want, and if I'm going to pay for it, I'm going to use it, because it's not cheap. And the other thing is that companies have the ability to provide this high-speed internet by upgrading to fiber optics, but it has a large overhead, and they're not willing to do it. So Comcast, rather than decide to upgrade to better serve its customers, decided to screw them instead.
Well, I'm really looking forward to upgrading to Burlington Telecom, which is going to be fiber optic. And, you know, I don't trust government that much, but if I had to trust one government agency, it might be the city of Burlington to defend my rights to the internet. And I mean, I may be disappointed down the road, but still. Right, and that got Comcast an incredible amount of bad press.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people were just shutting off the service and going to other providers.
But you said that you don't trust the government. You know, there are definitely examples of governments who have stopped internet access, such as China, right?
Right. China has what they call the Great Firewall, or an enclosed intranet, where they control they try to block information from sites outside of their country and create sort of levels of surveillance. When I was talking about earlier with corporate responsibility, it's appalling to find out that not only does China have its intranet to limit its exposure to its population's exposure to certain ideas, but that companies like Google and Microsoft and Yahoo recognize the market potential there and sign waivers with the Chinese government to turn over information about people who are dissenters, these Silicon Valley companies build the filtering software that allows China to, you know, create this sort of censored environment.
And in the case of Google, this seems to clash like really blatantly with their corporate motto, which is "Don't be evil."
Yeah, do no evil.
Yeah.
Right.
But this effort has by and large failed. You know, political dissidents are still thrown in jail for saying things that, you know, are outrightly caught in these filters. But, you know, this new democratic medium is harder to censor. I mean, you know, before, if you wanted to censor someone, you'd smash their printing press, or you'd take them off the radio, or, TV, but right now I could start a blog and say all sorts of subversive things. So it's the notion that each individual can go out and express their opinions, and you can't, you know, it's hard to censor the mind of a billion people, you know, despite how hard
I think the structures are really important, though. We're talking about individual capability. Just because I can make a YouTube video or I can write a blog doesn't mean that the structure of how these corporations are setting things up is wrong. And in fact, we know what we know about individual use is that people are just self-serving. Like, mostly we're on our Facebook and our MySpace and doing our email, and we're not like grandly protesting censorship in China.
But that's not true, because in China, the internet has been the main force for pro-democracy movements and questioning the, you know, the big issues that are taboo in China. And I think that especially with people signing into collaboratively, like programmers have collaborated to create workarounds to get around the golden shield.
Yeah, we're getting some results, but, you know, quite honestly, think how much better things might be in China if there was a completely open internet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we might have a different government. We might have a lot of things, the things different. So you can get around it, and there's kind of a delight, but my spams avoided the China firewall. But, you know, I mean, but they disable you from being any more than 2 or 3% effective if you have to start a new blog every week because they find Sam's bad blog and start and smash it, and then he has to start another, and people don't know where to go to get your information. So yeah, and I mean, I'm appalled that other countries are talking about doing the same thing. There's legislation pending now in Australia to give the government the power to censor websites that they think are bad and dangerous. And of course, their criteria for bad and dangerous is pretty vacuous and could apply to a lot of different people. And Russia is planning on kind of doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, I think virtually every country has had some kind of internet censorship. A lot of countries like the United Arab Emirates have blocked things that are, you know, heretical. But, you know, even in this country, we've seen that AT&T has been spying on its customers illegally.
Yes.
Why so? How?
Talk about that.
I don't know.
Oh, they've been, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, they've been in their telephone services, obviously, but on the internet, they've been documenting users, getting the IP addresses of people who are on the terrorist list, and then monitoring the communications of anybody who is associated with them and anyone who's associated with them. And in fact, they've created I believe, a large program that will kind of index everybody on the internet.
Oh, you mean like people on the terrorist list like Cat Stevens?
Yeah.
and then they report to the government?
And they report it to the government. And in fact, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a kind of pro-internet freedom movement, has filed a class action suit against AT&T for violating its terms of service. But at the same time, there was
I think we need to demand that these corporations serve us and not our government. I mean, I know this is a larger issue of rights and surveillance and the Patriot Act, but, you know, we should demand that corporations aren't, you know.
Well, AT&T seems to be a particularly pernicious one. For example, they've developed a new technique for engaging in surveillance over the internet as a broad-based entity, just prospecting for people who post or say or write things that might fall into certain categories, right? I mean, it's a good thing that, you know, if terrorist becomes a synonym for you look sexy, right? For example, like, oh, you're bad, right? That actually means you're good, right? But and then all of a sudden, you know, you'll be on this list. But it's mass surveillance for everyone. And then if everyone's under surveillance and these spiders and robots are wandering around waiting for people to say bad things, that's incredibly evil. It could put a chill on the entire society. And everyone now has to use code words for, you know, I don't like Republicans or something. I mean, it's really dangerous.
But I mean, to some extent, I think that the market's going to take care of that. Like you said, that as soon as you get the chance, you're going to switch over to an internet service that you can do what you want on. And I think that'll kind of be the emerging question: is are some companies going to get it that we don't want our information censored, and may not be acting responsibly, but may be acting just in their best interest?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody talks about the iPhone. The iPhone's only available on AT&T, and AT&T is keeping records of calling circles, like who people call, and if two people on the terrorist list call each other, then they start surveilling your conversation and reporting to the government without the government asking to begin with.
And this is so
right, without a
wrong.
warrant.
I'm
you
so
bet.
tired of the argument that you don't have anything to worry about if you're not a terrorist. Right?
Yeah, I have a lot to worry about.
It's absolutely wrong. Those are our rights, and if we let them erode, then when the time comes time to claim them, we don't have much ground to stand on.
Well, and then there's the whole issue of downloading music and trying to find people, and even some of the universities have become part of that. I know at the University of Vermont.
Well, then we get into the whole issue of copyright laws, and one thing that Comcast does is prevent you from it tries to prevent you from downloading copyrighted materials with BitTorrent. I mean, there's two issues with BitTorrent. One, it might slow down the speed of the internet, but two, it's still illegal to download all these things. So what the Associated Press tried was to download a copy of the King James Bible, which is not under copyright, and Comcast stopped them, which shows, that they're watching what you're doing, but maybe they don't even know what they're doing. So,
and I know universities are also cooperating to stop this downloading, and all of a sudden every university IT department becomes a law enforcement agency trying to stop people. I know I've had someone in my office saying, I'm concerned that this one computer over here has some vestiges of downloaded MP3s on it, and people might be using it.
A perfect example of this, I know a certain individual who was given a cease and desist letter from MGM because he downloaded a copy of 300, the movie, and he goes to the University of Vermont. And how else are they going to get that information? Through the university and through the internet service provider.
And I see a very clear, a very clear downward turn if schools are taking it on themselves to get involved in this. Like, what other things are schools going to decide are not, helpful to students? I know even in my own school district in high school, the firewall at our school blocked things like gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered sites because they felt that they were endorsing a lifestyle. And we actually had to get into a fight about that. But how soon is it before schools decide, anything?
Right, you're talking about social legislation, which is your example with Verizon.
Oh,
right,
yeah. What Verizon did recently was they offer a text messaging service so that if somebody subscribes to a political group, like let's say I subscribe to Barack Obama's campaign, he could send me text messages.
Yeah.
Well, an abortion rights group, a pro-choice group, signed up to this service, and Verizon refused to deliver their messages. And this was perceived as, Verizon said, we don't have to deliver them if we, disagree with them politically or we think it could get us in hot water. But this was actually, they had to reverse it just because the public outcry was so big.
Right. Who are they to decide what the speech is on my text message? For example, but there's an issue of arrogance. They feel they can do it. It's like we have, it's like the old introduction to the $6 Million Man. We have the technology, we have the ability. And so they feel that gives them the power to do it. And to the extent that the internet is increasingly controlled by a few companies, I mean, we've already dumped on AT&T and Verizon. Well, who else is going to give you phone service?
Yeah.
Unicell got bought up, and and so that's really an issue. I want to talk about another thing, and that is that Russia is stepping up their efforts to censor the internet inside Russia, but they've also taken a more proactive step, and they're funding a lot of people to build pro-government websites and they're spending a lot of money on this by making like youth culture websites, and they get music stars to come on them and endorse them, and then, oh, come to our website and see a video chat with some youth-oriented star or whatever, and that person may not say, oh, Vladimir Putin is the best, but all the surrounding stuff will, and they're working very hard to use the internet aggressively for propaganda purposes. Now, that's not just in Russia. There are all kinds of people who are hired by political campaigns in the United States to be professional bloggers. They just sit around and blog, oh, Hillary is so wonderful, and, you know, Ron Paul rings my bell, and, you know, that also is kind of a corporatist infringement, I think, on the polis, or the forum, the agora, where we're supposed to stand up and talk about political issues.
But, you know, to defend the internet, I don't think that, like, Russian propaganda is anything new, nor are journalists being paid to, you know, support
But centralizing the debate about how we're going to deal with some of these problems on a global level around nationalist rhetoric, I mean, right, the reason we can't influence China and Russia from doing that is part of this nationalism, I think, that influences, or sovereignty issues that influence what we kind of want to consider as a global experience.
And the internet becomes another forum for this kind of dispute. I recall that during the U.S. NATO action against the former Yugoslavia, that the Serbs kept hacking the NATO website. So when you went to the NATO website, there was a big flaming skull and say, we murder everyone we don't like, and, you know, that kind of stuff. But even more perniciously, in the disagreement between Russia and Estonia about the removal of a monument celebrating that Russian troops liberated Estonia, the Russian response was to do a denial of service attack, cyber terrorism, on Estonia, and basically shut down all the...
Yeah, states are not necessarily, you know, controlling these they're called botnets, and they're networks of infected computers that can be sent to attack a single site. But some countries, it's not known whether Russia just kind of asked the hacker community or whether there was money exchange. But I mean, there's different, like, sometimes people say, oh, you know, it was just...
It has to be deliberate government policy. I remember when we were doing the China topic, they were talking about cyber terrorism as being, like, you know, one of the limiting, because of the way that we limit arms control and stuff, that cyber terrorism is, you know, would be an important force.
Okay,
for them.
now the internet's big, so we could probably keep talking for another half hour, but time's up. So the question I want to ask you is this kind of stuff going to get better or worse in the next 10 years? Nicole?
It's going to get worse. I'm a technophobe. I don't trust those people. I think we're definitely need to seriously consider the future of net control and go for free speech all the time.
Sam Natale?
I have to disagree. It's going to get better because we've seen in China the government efforts of censorship have failed. We've seen in America the corporate efforts to get rid of net neutrality have failed. You know, people talking on the internet, and people are going to continue talking more and more. And in fact, this debate is evidence because we found out about all these problems from the internet. I didn't open up a book in the course of my research.
Right. Yep. Sam Rickard?
I think it's going to get better simply because the notion that you can censor the internet and the nature of the internet itself, we have so much information invested in there that while at the same time it makes us vulnerable, it also liberates us because it really does span across borders.
All right, thanks a lot for watching this week's edition of Flashpoint. Don't forget, think for yourself!